Up there. First, I want to say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, actually the honor, to say a few words about Jim Goodman. First of all, I think, though, I could share some humorous stories, a ton of them, because Jim and I and Joe and Kyle and a bunch of us that were young insurance professionals did a lot of that, but they've only given me a few minutes because I want you to be able to get back there and eat. So I'm just going to say a couple words as Jim is looking down, just 2 words really. And those of you who don't know what this was, excuse me, but those of you who do will appreciate, because you could think of all the things we did. Snow job. and I'll leave it at that, other than those of you who want to tell some stories. Jim and I and Joe and many of us here, Jim Benson, Dave Cooksley, why isn't he here? We had a lot of fun together, and Sue, you probably don't know, I talked to Jim probably more than you know. Yeah, he talked to me more than you know, and if he was ever astray, it's because of me, and some of these other guys too, but yeah, I did lead him astray a lot once, because he was straight, and he used to have to get us back in order. Oh, I do want to tell you one thing. We were in a room one time, and Bishop will remember this. We were in a room a lot of times, and for some reason we'd all be in the same room. There was about 15 of us, and we were doing some crazy things like drinking and maybe, well, no, Tim, we weren't doing that. I'm not going to put that on tape like Tim did. And we were making enough noise that you heard it a mile away. And somebody was knocking on the wall next door, and apparently must have called the hotel sheriff for security. And we were going nuts. We're making a ton of noise right up to the point where he knocked on the door. And Jim, who I think had a few drinks, and he's the straightest guy you want to know. The rest of us are all nuts. Jim says, "I'll handle this." And he goes up and opens the door, and the sheriff says, "Are you making noise in here?" And Jim, without missing a beat, straight face says, "No, it's the guy next door." Slams the door and he goes next door. I swear, he just got up. This is Jim. If you know Jim, how straight he was, and Joe will confirm this. It was nuts. Maybe you didn't know Jim Goodman. Some of you in here, maybe you knew him a little bit. Some of you, maybe you knew him real good, like myself and Joe and Kyle, some of the other young insurance, well, we were young insurance professionals at one time. But Jim does have a place in our insurance history. Because like all of you, the honorees tonight, Jim did a lot of good things for the insurance industry, both for his career and just insurance in general. And just talking to Tim, as he said, and a few other folks in here, Jim got people to join, to get involved. That's what he did. He had some of those traits that leaders have, and I won't go through all of them, but Jim was passionate. I mean, he was passionate. The people who knew him, he focused on something, and I had the privilege of having him call on me, as I just said to Sue, a lot of times. And one of the things I did on the side was speaking. Jim would call on me, and I'd listen to him, and he was just so passionate, straight. He wanted to get these things done, and Jim sometimes didn't suffer fools lightly. He just wanted to get it done right. Consummate professional insurance agent, like a lot of you in here. Gave a lot to the industry. It's fitting, I believe, to have this award, and I'm so happy that the Connecticut Yips did this, that they created an award for him in his name that can go forth in posterity. And it's also really nice that he's getting the first one. The other thing that Jim had that's critical in this industry, especially because of the way consumers think about insurance and agents, is Jim had integrity. You couldn't shake that for anything. And I was around him enough. I mean, and I tried to lead him astray, Sue, believe me, many times. But Jim, he was exemplary in his honesty, in his forthrightness. He lived what he talked. And I admired him for that. I looked at him, I said, wow, how could he, every time I was with him. Responsibility is another thing. And these are just things I point out after we had all the fun before, because I just think of Jim, and I think of him looking down on us right here, and he's probably saying, why the hell did they get LaManna to talk about it? But responsibility, Jim had that. The other thing Jim had, and I had the good fortune of being with him not too long before he went into a different world. He had some problems at his church, St. Paul's Episcopal, is that it, Sue? And he called me up months before he was planning something. Even with all his own troubles, he was still reaching out to get things done. And I do need to tell you this. His church had, I think it was a new pastor, right, Sue? And Jim was arranging a huge meeting of all the people because he wanted this church to carry on. They needed to get unity. And he called me up and said, could you come and speak to us? Could you do this? I mean, even then, in talking to Jim then, you would never have known that he had his own problems, serious problems. Because Jim had a strict limit on self-pity, and that strict limit was 0. Never said a word, not a single word. But he kept coming to me and all this. He says, I need you to get these people so that they will stay united, that this church will move on into the next century. Correct, Sue? Yeah. That's all he cared about. And that's the last memory I have of Jim, just working hard to get something done. Insurance industry, his family, his church. This is what he did. It was, when I sat down with him, it was always, what can we do? It was, what can I do, he would ask, to make things better? What can I do to make a difference? And I think if everybody emulated Jim in those questions, we'd have a wonderful world and accomplish a lot and get everything done that we need to get done. I'm not going too much past my time. I don't think Jim Goodman ever woke up, and Sue can attest to this, jumped out of bed and said, I can't wait to be mediocre today. It wasn't Jim Goodman. He was exceptional, and he was exceptional because of his actions, the way he lived his life. I was around this guy enough, and I'm looking, I'm saying, he just did everything right. Good look, and everything was right for him. I looked at him and I say, why? So let's celebrate Jim Goodman in the award, but in his time here on earth. We all know, life isn't the way it's supposed to be. Rather, life is the way it is. How we cope with it makes all the difference. And Jim Goodman made a difference by living his life as it was. Join me, not an applause for me, but an applause for Jim, who's looking down on us, an acknowledgement of Jim Goodman's life and what he did, not only family, church, for the insurance industry, for the world that he lived in. A big round of applause for Jim Goodman, whoever he is. Now it's my honor to present the Jim Goodman Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm going to present it to Jim's wife, Susan Goodman. Susan, would you join me up at the podium, please? I'm going to give Susan the award. I think it's heavy, Sue.